the first question which I would ask would be more like, what are the key characteristics of the food system in the Netherlands as it stands at the moment, and where does the Hoylanden as a farm sit within that or without of that?
Well, I think, and it's more as my opinion,
Yeah.
it's a vision. I think when you look at the Netherlands, the biggest part is still producing for export, of course. And organic dairy is a little bit different. I think most of it still goes to the, not local, but national market. But when you look at the overall picture, I think agricultural products, are basically for export. The biggest part. And as an organic dairy farm, it's a little bit better that our milk mainly goes to, just stays in Holland. But I joined, I was a member of the board of our corporation for a short time, and then I also had to join in the negotiations about the milk price. And the way that went, I was completely disillusionized. So I said, this is not what I want to be part of. And I know we can't, with all our cows, with all the milk, we need the cooperation now, but this is not what I want to be focused on. So from that time we said we're just going to focus on our own farm, and we have a shop, of course, and it's just a very small part of the milk that goes into our cheese and our butter, but all the meat that we produce now from the cows that exit the group, let's say, every year, between 12 and 16 cows, they all the meat now goes, we sell it through our own shop, so that's already much better than it was. And maybe we would like to expand that with the cheese also, but just very small steps. So what we did was already years ago that we said we're not going to join that world market idea, or it's not even nice to join it, so just see what we can do here and slowly expand that. So that's our goal, that with the food we could do it as local as possible. But the way the agriculture is organized in Holland, of course, that's not completely possible for all the farmers with the system that we have now.
Okay. I mean, and do you think the way that Holland does food production, exporting, leaves communities vulnerable, perhaps, to crisis?
Well, of course, it's completely unhealthy what we do, because already if you look at the short picture, when you look at the land prices here and compare it to even Germany or France, that is very near us, it's so much higher here. It's not logic that you can produce so much milk and even 80% for the export, and that you can still sell it apparently for some kind of price. That shouldn't be possible. So what was your question again?
Well, if it leaves communities vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it leaves the farmers also very vulnerable, that this is an unhealthy system, that we can only keep up with all the subsidies and the trade contracts that we have with other countries, etc. But it's not organic. There's nothing healthy about it. So the farmers are vulnerable, and for people here, well, I think when you look at it now, I don't know exactly how it works. I know that we export, like the milk, the conventional milk, I think we export about 70%, and of course we also import a lot of food, but I don't know exactly how it works. But if there would be a big crisis or a war, I think we have enough land to provide food for our own people. So farmers have to make a switch, but that's possible. I think that would be, but there is no stimulus for it now. Not even the government says we should switch to our local products and just see how many farmers we still need for producing food, and the other farmers active like carekeepers for the landscape or something. That's not what's happening now. So.
And this may be a kind of far-fetched question, but do you think perhaps that this globalized food system that focuses on production and export allowed for the virus to spread, or almost created the virus?
I don't know if it created. No, I didn't create the virus. I think viruses will be all around us always. It's part of our ecosystem. It belongs to us. I think the speed with it, the big steps it took in such a short time, of course, is because of that we travel so much. We are so, and food is one of those travel reasons. so it certainly was part of it. Yeah, but I don't think the way food is produced, I don't know, because I don't know exactly what was the how you call it, the cause of it. You know, there are talks about that it's weird wild animals eaten in China or something. I don't know. I think if you look at without that virus, if you look at our agricultural system, of course, what we do with animals, we have said that for years, that it's actually impossible. When you look at the stables now, how many animals are on a very small piece? It's waiting for some other virus to come. Yeah, I'm sure of it. And of course, that already happened with what was it, MKZ, or the mad cow disease, or with plagues. We had. What we do then here is just kill all the animals. And until now, nobody really shouted about it. You know, apparently it's all for our own safety, so kill them all and we start again. But it's, of course, quite strange when you do that. Yeah.
True. And in terms of your work here, it'd be nice to know at least what you do here, but then also if the kind of lockdown affected your work, or what changes came about when
well, I think for us the lockdown was what we do here is the main income that we have is still the dairy. So the dairy cows, we have 80 dairy cows, a little bit more, and for the organic milk, and they all graze outside, except for I think 3 months a year. Then it's too wet outside, so they have to stay in. And they all give birth in spring, so they follow the seasons. So when they need the fresh grass, most protein, then it's there outside. So they graze everything themselves. So in winter time, we only feed hay or very old silage, you know, from summers, autumn or whatever, and we don't feed any maize, corn, grains, nothing. Just a very small bit of concentrate in the milking parlor, but that's all organic, and so they don't give a lot of milk. Also, it's like 6,000 a year. And with the virus, for us, it was really relaxing. It's really back to just the basic thing, and of course, then you see the big benefit of living like this, because all the stress that was in the cities, when you were here, you didn't notice it. And of course, with the social farm, we had the rules of 1.5 meter, etc. But okay, from now on, we sat outside for coffee. Normally, we would sit inside. Well, that's perfect, and the 1.5 meter is okay. And but we just work and do, and it's actually very relaxed. And what we also have is a meeting room. And normally that was like 4 times, 5 times a week it was rented out, and that takes a lot of work, and that was all of a sudden it stopped. So I was really relaxed in my work, and the children were home. It was really idyllic. So
I've heard that actually from quite a few people. They're like, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really. And what you notice is that more people, like, of course, it takes some effort for people to come to our farm to collect to buy the meat and the cheese. But we do that on purpose, because we think if people want to buy our cheese and our meat, we want the story to go with it. I don't want it to put just somewhere in a shop. Or we are also called by these bigger stores. You know, how are they called? It's last week before holidays. I'm tired. My brains are not working. You know, the bigger, the ones before the supermarkets, groothandels.
Warehouses?
Yeah, warehouses. And they even called us for our butter or our cheese. And so for us, that's no use. And I can't just sell it to the corporation, because there is no story with it. You just make up something, and that's okay, but that's not what I want to do it for. So people who come here really choose to cycle all the way, or to do that every week. And so that's quite a small but steady group. Of course, you also have an outer circle of people who are very enthusiastic for a short time, and then it bleeds away again. So, but what you saw during the corona is that those people came more often, and sometimes brought their children, like it was more like an outing or something. And on one hand, it made us a little bit nervous, because all of a sudden people came here. But on the other hand, you saw that what space means, how luxurious it is, especially in Holland. It's so busy here. That's also something that we felt during the corona. We realized how busy this country is, how enormously. It's not. What we like to see is that we have cities and a rural area. But if you are realistic, then it's like New York. We have Central Park, and it's like a big city. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And did it change maybe the way you look at the value of your work? You know, these grass-fed cows which are native to the area, and the role that you play in maintaining a healthy ecosystem here and also a healthy community?
Well, we already did that before the corona. I think we already had the feeling that we want to do what feels right for us. And maybe we were a little bit too early with it still, I think, because when you look at the government, they start talking about farmers should do this, farmers should, but there's still no money to support that, and we already are building that way or making our system that way. So we really have to make sure that we earn enough money with it ourselves, actually. So we already did that before the corona. I think during the corona just showed us how lucky we are that we have this job in this country.
Super. And now I'm getting to what I think is like the more interesting part of the interview. If you had a vision of the future of how food should be done in the Netherlands, where would that be?
No, it's a
military operation.
Training a few days. Well, it's a bit difficult question because I don't know exactly the numbers of hectares that we have, or I don't know what the potential is in Holland. What I feel should be possible is that I think we went wrong with all those trade covenants or contracts, because that it made possibilities, but it also made work the other way around. So I think sometimes I feel that we should follow Switzerland more when it comes to food. That you should be more protective of your own production, but then you also regulate it more. So what they do is really a nice combination of with production and maintaining the landscape. And I think that's what we should do here. So ideally, in the future, I think a lot of farmers have to stop here. I think that because there are a lot of farmers that just work like on a like industry, like they don't need the land or they don't have any land at all. They just have their stables, and within it, there it happens, and they produce, and they have manure that they like a waste, and so I think they should close actually, and be self-sufficient. And maybe, like when you have a very nice product, maybe export it, but only small scales, I think we're doing wrong with calling our agriculture a big part of our economic system while having so little land. And
Interesting.
Yeah, and of course it would be very idyllic if people all went to the farmer themselves and get their products, but I don't believe it's human, but it's also especially Dutch, that people are really easy, really lazy. Dutch people are really lazy. They really, when it comes to going somewhere to buy your food or taking time to cook, it all has to go fast and very efficient. What they say is that we used to have all these programs where cooking is something for a family, is something bonding. For most of the families, it's just not that in Holland. It's when you have money and when you're a little bit higher educated, then it's like that. But for the biggest group, it's not. So it's very difficult to. I think food is not that way in our history. It's not. No, it's nice if it would be, but it's not.
And do you think the virus can help perhaps as a kind of rethink of the food system as it is, and make a lot of people sit down and say, wait, maybe we do need to change the way we do things here in the Netherlands?
Well, I think it already showed that it didn't, but it's also because we were not that damaged by it, actually. Here, I think when you look at the south, in Brabant, I think there everybody more or less knows someone who was had corona or was infected by whatever. And here, a lot of people don't have seen anyone. They had heard stories, but so we just noticed the regulations and all the rules, etc., but not what it means. So I think this was a missed opportunity, but it will definitely happen again. Yeah.
So what do you think is the thing that can really help drive the change then from how food is now to the future?
I think it has to do more with the climate, that like a virus that will happen, that can happen always, and it's even realistic. It's part of, we are part of the ecosystem, so that is one part. So you can improve your health system, and that makes you less vulnerable. But you can't out the viruses or something. You can, they're just there. But we are, as a country, very vulnerable when it comes to water. We are really under the water level, and indirectly that's connected to the climate change. And I think we do need something like that. There was a few years ago, there was a program that was called, it was what's it called? Geromantiseerd, so not real, but it looked real. It was like four
a fictional program.
Yeah, it was like a series of four episodes, and it was called When the Dikes Break, and it was really realistic. And they showed what they, because now everything seems to go slowly, like the climate change seems to go slowly, and even if we say it goes really fast, for people, normal people living in the city, it still is slow. Because with the water, last year was really dry, and then we said, okay, as a government, you should now, like they did in South Africa, say, okay, we are going to use less water. So even if it's not necessary, now is the time to teach people what it means. Because now you're in the luxuries that you still have enough, but people have to start learning it. But they didn't. They saw it as something very good, that they maintained the amount of water for people, that you could still take a bath. And of course they said you should do it, but you could still do it. And that was their pride. Like we said, no, it should be the other way around. You should now do like, no, it's also your responsibility, and it now means we're going to close the tab and teach people what it means. And that was with that program, When the Dikes Break. It showed all of a sudden how fast it goes. So instead of the water rising, oh, but I can still go to work, and the water rising, but I can still go to the cinema. It was like in one day the dikes broke, and then it showed how fast. And in one day, half the country was flooded, and that half the country was homeless or dead, or they were. And it was so good, because that really made. I heard a lot of people talking about it. So something like that makes people think, then it's real, and that makes you that doesn't matter how rich you are, that's what makes you vulnerable.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we take a lot of pride in the measurements that we take, like bigger dikes, and that's what we keep talking about, how good we are in those dikes and our water management, etc. Well, I think you should show the other side, like it's lucky that we have that, but what we're actually fighting against is this, and make it our responsibility, not the responsibility of those dike masters of the government, and letting people sleep very quietly, but make it make it a little bit afraid.
Okay.
Something like that will work.
And in terms of like the future of agriculture and the past of agriculture, do you think that there's a lot of inspiration that Dutch farmers can take from the past and how agriculture was done in the past? And bring that to the future?
Yeah, for what we do is a little bit back to the past. Like we make as less silage as possible, and we don't use any grains and maize. And but a lot of farmers don't believe in that. And that's also because there was in our history there was a big difference between sand farmers and clay farmers. When you look at dairy farmers, also at crop farmers. So we are here, we have sand. And since the artificial fertilizer, that compensated almost, not equally, but almost equally. And that really was, in history, sand farmers were really the poor farmers. Clay farmers in the north, Groningen, they were the rich farmers. When you look at that now, they have these huge stables still, huge houses, like monumental houses. And here everything was small. And and I think that's still in there, that they have the feeling like we didn't start using it for nothing. There's a reason, and they still, in this area, they still believe like when you go organic, it means just less income, less production, more weeds. So there is a lot to learn. Only the knowledge slips away quite fast. There are less and less farmers who still know how it works. Um, but it's not that they're really open to it, you know.
Okay.
The farmers here are quite, like, look at all these demonstrations. I think there's still a bigger group that wants to change. There's a bigger group of farmers that see, okay, I can shout that I want this, but I see that everybody is against it, so maybe I should change. But there's still also a big group, and those are the ones that are in the lobbies and the whatever, who
Yeah.
say, no, we want to do it that way. So, yeah.
Okay. And I mean, you mentioned like the loss of knowledge.
Mm.
I'm wondering if there are like networks of farmers that share knowledge and you know, share experiences and help each other, like here in the Wageningen area,
Yeah.
connect to each other and support each other.
Yeah, there are like those networks, and they're becoming more and more used. And what you also see is that it's more like here in Ede, like very locally, the gemeente Ede, the local community, they are organizing now courses like nature inclusive agriculture, and they can be joined by all the farmers. So we are actually the only organic farmer within a group of 15 conventional farmers. And so that's also what you see more and more other farmers joining in to just see how it works. And when it gets to those real traditional way of farming, then I think it's really small scaled still. And but that can also be a little bit misjudged because we are next to Wageningen. So in Wageningen you have all these young people who start a small farm, a small garden, and they really get into that plowing again with horses or whatever. And that's very difficult to make a step from that kind of farming to those big scaled farms that we have now. So, you know, when people talk about food forest or how you call it, you know,
Yeah, agroforestry and
yeah, it all sounds nice, but when you have a huge farm, then to make that step is like impossible, very unrealistic, you know.
yeah, the transition there.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, I mean, what do you see your role is if you're the only organic farmer in the room with 15 conventional farmers? Like,
To show them that it is possible and not being too, that's what we also noticed. Well, that's what we want as a role, not be the one who are too extreme. So because you have also a farmer, he's always the very extreme one. But what you notice is that other farmers then go, you know, when someone's very extreme, they just stop and they don't want to join and they have all these reasons why it's not possible. And we just try to make it very subtle and easy and agree with them on some things and then say, you're right, but we have to, or you're right, but maybe you can try. And then you see that people start to copy small things. Like here in this area, everybody was very against organic, just not, you know, it was, and we were laughed at and people said, oh, you're going to make 2 years and then you're gone. So, and what happened, of course, in the first few years, all these weeds started coming out, the grass stopped growing because it was so used to artificial fertilizer. And then everybody said, see, that's what happens, that's organic. And then slowly, we just had to find out, you know, by pulling it out, then with grazing, and slowly we found our way, and now it actually looks quite good. And then farmers started noticing, oh yeah, now it's, yeah, you feel, and then we got compliments like, it looks quite well, you did a good job. And then slowly came the time that they asked, like, so what do you do then with the clovers? And then you see that one farmer uses clovers, and the other farmer, slowly. And that's what we like to do, then you make it more realistic for people. Like, I want people to join. I don't want to just make them a picture of what they should do. I want them to move. And that's what we see ourselves like.
super. It's incredible. What do you think this metaphor, perhaps, of the work that you've done here, or the thing that you've done here, how can it be a metaphor for maybe change in the system as a whole?
Well, what I would like to think is that now it's really here is the food producers are opposite to the food consumers. Well, they are also consumers, but I think they're even, most of them are the worst consumers that you can imagine. It's really like, but still. So you have the consumers and the producers. And what should happen is that I really think that maybe half, maybe even more, but of the producers, they should skip because it's just too much. But the other part that is able should move next to the consumers. So not only that's slowly coming now, that farmers are opening up their farm that people can see. But still, farmers are very defensive of what they do. And I think that should change in not defending why you do it like that or why it's impossible or why, but move next to them and say, okay, this is our challenge. I am not the producer. I'm just doing a part of our plan. You know, you are making the clothes or you are making whatever you do. Everybody has a role, and I'm producing the food because it's more efficient if one does it for 10 than if everybody does it a little bit. So move next to them again and together make a plan of how we're going to do it. I think that's what we try to do here also on a very low scale. I think that would be very nice if that could happen in a bigger scale, that farmers would find allies again in this story and then make the plan together how we're going to I think that.
And because I've interviewed quite a few people now, and a lot of them mention Wageningen 8 Duurzaam as a new thing that's connecting.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that's a part of this, to kind of counter the alienation between consumer and producer?
It makes people more aware. I think, you know, it's just like with marketing, that repeating things makes people. At one point, it sticks, but what you miss in the whole story are the real producers. Like it's always a little bit small and nice, and what they want is now I think there are plans for a shop in Wageningen. And I understand, but then you still don't have the connection between the producers and the consumers. Like making that plan together will only work if people not only realize how we produce, but also why, what makes them. You know, they have to know more about it. It's ridiculous how little we teach our children about the production of food. And they still have here, when you look at books, it's still about the farmer who does everything. What is farmer, female farmer actually? Farm? You have a farmer here.
You mean in the books? Yeah.
You have the boer and the boerin. And I don't know what's in English. But the woman, like with a long dress and big hips and, you know, I don't know, milking the cow by hand. It's so ridiculous. So I think that's part of it, you know, making people more aware and making it easier to buy organic products or local products. But if you want a big change, you should really get the farmers in. Yeah. Okay. Because now what happens is, like for this area, a lot of groups are making plans for this area. You have Wageningen, Duurzaam, Mooi Wageningen, all these inhabitants of the cities. But the farmers living here are never asked or not join in, or they're immediately opposite, and that's not good. I think that's not. Then you will never get there. You really have to do it together.
Yeah. So one of the things that I studied in Puerto Rico, which fascinated me, was because I was staying on a farm, and once a month, a group of farmers would come together on one person's farm, and they would all work on that farm.
Oh wow!
And for that one day, they would do a big project, like build the fence around for the cow. And then 1 month later, they all go to another person's farm, and it was the farmers and all the kids and everything.
Oh wow!
And it was incredible to see, also like agroecological farmers with conventional, talking, eating together, working together.
Oh, that's special, yeah.
And that's something which, for them was like, this is what we need to do to drive change. It's like, keep working together, keep sharing knowledge, and here I haven't seen that same thing in a way.
No.
Like
I think because that has to do a little bit also with the culture, I'm afraid. In Holland, it's we are so, of course, we're quite rich as a country already for a long time, and we always have been quite individual, and so we don't appreciate these networks, these social networks that much. Everybody here is more of a, everybody knows each other, and when it comes to certain things, then we can rely on each other. But I even think that the farmers here look at each other as competition when it comes to the land. Definitely, because there's not enough land. So you do nice, but when it comes to land, you would never say, well, I'm thinking of buying that piece of land, because there is always a chance that you would think that I'm going to be fast and calling them. And, so there's no complete trust. And you see that a little bit different between the organic farmers. That's like a different group, a different culture between those farmers. So they are more cooperative, and we can definitely call anyone just asking, okay, we have a problem with this, how do you solve it? But we wouldn't do that with our neighbors, because you just don't do it, and it's a little bit to be ashamed of, or people would start talking about it, or making use of it, you know, things like that. And I think it is really in our culture that it's less and less that we trust on social networks. It's more on money and your own work and your business relations than social networks. Yeah, and that's a big loss, I think. Yeah.
Super.
I think that would be very strong if something like that would exist here, that farmers would really work together, because now what exists is study groups that you come together one evening every month in wintertime to talk about fertility, or talk about what kind of fertilizer you use, things like that. But that's all very safe, you know, it's very safe and superficial, and nobody shows. When there was a price crisis in the dairy price, or for the price for milk, everybody knew that farmers had a hard time, but nobody knew who. Everybody said, "Oh, it must be difficult. Yeah, it must be difficult." But nobody said, "Oh, I'm really happy." Nobody.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that would be very nice if that would be possible here. If farmers would be connected like that, yeah, that would be great.
Let's see if it's. I can also. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So would you say that the Wageningen, Duurzaam, and Mooi Wageningen, or these networks are more like economic networks than social networks? More like.
Maybe
trying
for
to
that.
find consumers and not really trying to work together.
No, well, it's not working together on a farm. I never heard that. No, but I have wondered many times. Like now, the last few weeks, we were always pulling the kruiskruid. That's like very poisonous. And it's being used by the government for several years. Now they stopped, but for several years in their green areas that they have, like in cities or next to the road, they use it in their seed combination. And then it appeared to be very poisonous for cows and horses. So now we have to pull it out by hand everywhere. And so I put it on the internet, on Instagram, like, okay, this is what we're doing. Anybody wants to come and help. And but then one person, what you notice is that people, when the city people are together, they can come together. You know, here for Mooi Wageningen, when they did what's it called, crowdfunding for buying a piece of nature, then they find each other. But to really go to a farmer and as a group say, okay, we're coming and help you today, that's really rare. Even Wageningen, I never had a group who said, okay, well, tell us what to do, next week we'll come, we'll help you out. No.
Okay. Wow, that's very different.
Yeah, it would be nice though, but no.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to study, because my hypothesis is that the social networks of the farmers in Puerto Rico like equip farmers better to deal with crisis.
Definitely.
Because they work together.
Yeah.
And here it doesn't happen, at least as far as I'm aware.
No, but it has to do with trust and individuality and being mistrusting each other and but that's also because we are with too many. And it's also in our nature, really. Like when I went to Nepal for a few months for doing my thesis, and the first thing, it's really Dutch in your head. Then the first thing I noticed was on every corner of every street, there was a small shop, and every morning they sold their breads, and so everybody went every morning out to buy their bread, and I think they all had their own shop they went to, etc. And then I saw it, and I immediately thought, in Holland, within a week, one of these shops would think, I'm going to make special bread. I'm going to be a little bit bigger and minimize my price. And then I would be bigger. And he would be out, but you don't think about it. It's all about how can I expand? How can I get more? That's so Dutch. And then I was in Turkey, and I was on an island, and there was this great resort, whatever. And you saw these hills, they were beautiful, but all unused. And I thought, this would never happen in Holland. Because everything is used in our country. Everything is looked as like, how can I use that? That's beautiful. We can use it. So that's so in our culture that it's all about expanding. Yeah.
So
And of course, it used to be different. We used to have a stronger social network,
Yeah.
but was in our culture it was much more connected to the church, and that wasn't a really nice thing. I think that's why so many people abandoned it. It didn't have, like in the south, you had the Catholic, and more here you have the Protestant and Reformed, and that was really strict and not nice and not happy. And Catholic was more happy and more outgoing. So maybe that was also a little bit more about eating together and celebrating together. But since the churches are also left, I think now there's not much that combines the whole thing. Yeah, it's weird, huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I guess if we're looking at like the future of food in the Netherlands, where do you think the future of food in the Netherlands is already happening?
I think I really like the initiatives of the young people that with this like a group like Toekomstboeren, that's like future farmers.
Okay.
You know those?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, that's a group of young people. Most I think studied in Wageningen, and they want to become a farmer, but you have a lot of problems, of course. The money, there's no land. If you just want to start a farm, it's almost impossible. And they join together, and they are really working hard on making themes more talked about also here by the government in Brussels, and they're really working hard to follow their ideals and stuff. So I think they're doing a good work. That's more how it should be, and maybe they can slowly make farmers see a different light. And of course you have these small things everywhere, but I think for Holland now to do that in a big change, it really has. It just means that a lot of farmers have to stop. What happens here now is impossible. You can't, like, ideally, when you would, let's say we have 100 farmers here, it's not possible to change those 100 farmers in 100 very organic, low-producing farms. That's not possible. You just have to cut 50 off. There is no other option, actually.
Okay.
And that's what everybody tries to postpone. Nobody wants to say it. Somebody said it, and the government, and he was immediately. But everybody knows that's what has to happen. So I have the feeling that we're in some kind of transformation situation, but it's very painful. It's very okay. But I think when you talk about the social networks, that would be so much for our country if that would happen here. If we were more able to really see it again as something social, and as farmers to be open for help or for working together. Yeah, that would be really, really special. Yeah.
So there's this one farm, Burgerboerderijen. I think.
Burgerboerderij. Oh,
No, you don't know it?
I don't think so. But maybe I do. But there's so many initiatives.
Okay, yeah, but so what they work on is like commons, like basically a farm that is owned by everyone. Like the land is owned by a lot of farmers together.
Yeah.
What would you think of something like that?
Well, the way it's being done now, we also have the concept here of herenboeren. That's I think a little bit the same. That like 200 consumers or 200 families, they buy actually a farm and they hire a farmer, and they all consume from that farm, but they still have a farmer who does the work.
Yeah.
And I would never want to be that farm. I imagine that it's nice if you have nothing to take over, if you're a student and you want to become a farmer, that's a good way to just do at least what you want to do. But to be in that kind of system, I wouldn't like it, because all the knowledge is still with me, and I have to deal with 200 people who don't know anything and who are,
your boss.
but they have the money. Then I feel it like a very unhealthy situation. What I would like is that people really come and work, like what you say with the farmers working together. That's already very different, and people really work with you, being interested. Yeah, I think that for me is a difference. If people just want to consume and from higher up and pay and say, well, maybe you like in a meeting, that's what already happens on some places, that these consumers then have meetings about their plan, but they're not doing it. Sometimes they pick their own vegetables, but they don't really see what's happening. They don't really see the stress or the hard work. But I think it's a step. It's a step, and a way of doing it. Yeah.
So you'd say that there is quite a lot of alienation, perhaps, like socially and individually, between, you know, society and farming and agriculture.
Enormously. We had a tour for children from school, and I said, and it was small children, and I said, okay, in part of what is the subject called in school, or what are you here for? And they said, we're doing a subject on oude ambachten. That means old professions, like already forgotten professions. Like,
farming.
bloody hell, yes, I'm a farmer. I'm doing something very now, but for them, farming is just a very old, like a wooden shoemaker. You know, it's like, okay, this is it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there is a big gap. But I think it goes way back to our history that farmers were really nothing to be proud of, and were mainly poor. And when you had money, you would make sure that you lived in the house and somebody else did the work for you. There's nothing, and people still, now we have children, of course, that go to school, and it's always for people very special. You are a farmer? And they, it's almost like it's very interesting, and they have this idyllic picture of, wow, you really work with your hands, but they never want to do it. It's not that they want to do it. I had a friend once who, because I used to live in the city, you know, I'm doing this now for 15 years, but before that I lived in the city. I never touched a cow, never nothing. So when I switched to this, a friend of mine came to work with me one day, and she was really honest. She laughed all the time, and everything went wrong, and she said, oh, this is fun, but I never want to do it again. I said, well, that's honest. That's really honest. Yeah. And in Holland, of course, a lot of people don't have to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I was shown the way here by this little girl.
That's
I'm
my
guessing
daughter.
It's your daughter.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the most important thing for her then, like in terms of, you know, the future and food? Like how do you communicate to her what is important in nature and what is important in farming?
We talk about this all the time, the way we look at it, and I want her to be very aware of what it means to eat meat, what it means to, she knows all the stress, what it means when it's very dry, what it means when it's very wet, that nothing is just there, that I hope she will never just buy something in the shop and not even thinking about where it comes from. I think we managed. I think she's, but that's why she says, I don't know if I want to become a farmer, because it's really a lot of work and a lot of stress. But she, and my son also, they really enjoy outside and just doing things with your hands and running and working with the animals. It's for them, it's very there, of course. It's logic that it's there almost, but they are really aware that it's different from all the children in their class. It's really different. And in the beginning, when they were really small, they always said, we want to live in an apartment. We want to be in the city. And now they would never want that. No.
Okay, interesting, super. If you have a question or
No, I'm very triggered about your idea with farmers working together. Would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. It was incredible, and at least, you know, there's a 75-year-old farmer who, you know, since he was 14 was planting yams, you know, and teaching the ecological ones, you know, how to do it.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And then we'd all go work together, and it was really incredible.
Yeah, but what you see here, that's what I have a little bit hope for. I said, like a friend of mine, she is a farmer in Groningen in the north, and they are crop farmers, and they used to be conventional, and now slowly they're making the change to organic. And her father has always been conventional, and of course he started in a period that it was only starting, and it became more and more artificial fertilizer, more and more chemicals, etc. But when they started to make that change, and he already stopped, and then he said, you know, he was just looking, and slowly in the process he said, oh, how are you going to do that? Well, we use this machine for that. Maybe I still have it. And then he just went up the attic, and he came down with some tool, and he said, well, we used to do it. Like that you see, oh wow, he is still triggered by it, and he knows so much. And for him, it's not something he detests. It's like, that's what he's raised with. It was really nice to see that you see all farmers are definitely not against it. They all have it in them. And if you ask them, they go, oh wow, yeah, nice, of course, I can show you. Yeah.